Welcome back, guys, once again to Nerd Rage Reacts. I am Ryan Anderson, and joining me in this reaction is...
the Skype Man, Hype Man.
That he is. It's Brad Learman. And on this episode, we'll be reacting to...
Well, see, there was like this really cool guy. He was like Ant-Man, and then there was another dude. It was actually a girl. It was an ant. It was a wasp. I think, yeah, it was a wasp. It was like Ant-Man and the Wasp kind of thing, you know?
Yeah, Ant-Man and the Wasp. The good, the bad, and if you should be excited for this film. So, Brad, what did you think about Ant-Man and the Wasp, just right off the bat here in non-spoilers?
I think in terms of tone, it was really fun. Very, very stark contrast to Infinity War, which came out, I think, almost 2.5 months earlier.
Yeah, give or take.
Which was a much more serious movie.
Absolutely.
To have this movie, kind of a goofy, heist / search and rescue kind of thing, was a really good change of pace.
And I was saying this to you before we got on the episode. I was actually thinking to myself, I thought that at some points it was a little bit too lighthearted. But especially when you put it in that particular context of something that was removed from that tone that we had that was so heavy and dark and the world was, and then kind of vibe that we got from Infinity War, this actually was kind of a breath of fresh air in that sort of context because you don't want to double down with all that stuff. Then people start to critique it like they did with DC, like, oh, it's too dark. Stop with all the dark stuff. So, yeah, I actually agree with you on that. So... as we like to do, we will start off with non-spoilers, and let's go right into it, which is, what did we love about this movie? Start with you, Brad.
What I liked about this movie, I think the one thing that I really liked about the movie, in contrast to, all of the kind of Phase 2 and Phase 3 Marvel movies, is that all of them are a contained story, but this one was more of... It felt like a much more direct continuation from the first one.
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah.
The two honestly, if you would watch Ant-Man, skip all the movies that came after, and just watched Ant-Man and the Wasp, it would almost feel. Oh, I guess maybe for a couple other plot points, it feels like a direct continuation.
Yeah, I would say aside from maybe Civil War.
Story.
Yeah. Aside from Civil War maybe being tossed around in a conversation, I would say that you pretty much could watch these back to back and you wouldn't miss a step, which I think is great. The ending, however, which we will get to later, that's a little bit heavier to go into. But honestly, I love that this film had so much heart to it. I know it wasn't a big point that the movie was trying to focus on, because I felt like it was more about the search for the original Wasp, Janet Van Dyne, and I actually loved the Scott and his daughter moments. Like, those were the best moments to me. Like, in the beginning, they're kind of like horsing around or whatever, as we've seen them do, and I don't want to spoil too much of it, obviously, but like, they're just having very father and daughter moments, and I think it's just... I don't know. We were just getting done talking about, family life and all that stuff, but I really found their chemistry as father and daughter to be so authentic and genuine. And then just some of the things that she says to him throughout the course of the movie, just like, I think she encourages him to be the better person. And we saw that a little bit in the first movie too. And I just think that she's just been, in a weird way, his rock, when usually that's like the partner's job to do. Like in a movie where, you've got the adult male and he's trying to be the hero, usually there's someone of his own age who's trying to like encourage him to be the better person. In this case, it's his little daughter, and she's just so charming, and like, she just gets him to be the better person. And I love that about their dynamic. So that's my favorite thing about this movie, honestly. Any other high points that you particularly loved about Ant-Man and the Wasp?
We get I guess a little bit deeper background into Hank Pym and sort of the work that he did prior to all of the Marvel movies.
Yeah. I do think that that's a cool way to explore it because honestly, I said this in my Stardust Reacts. If you guys want, we have that always up after one of these big movies. I've been doing Stardust Reacts and you guys have been responding in kind, and I appreciate that. When I was doing that, it's usually pretty non-spoilery because it only give you like 10 seconds to do it. But on that, I was just saying that I think that there's some really heartfelt moments in this, but it does jump around a lot. And one of the things that jumps is like talking about Hank's past without telling too much. And they do the de-aging thing like they did with the last movie. And I kind of wanted to just see that whole movie because I love the Hank Pym character. I grew up on him that way. Now, granted, he's had some not so heroic moments throughout the course of the years, and comic book readers will know what I'm talking about with that. But at the end of the day, though, I really find that character, well, especially because I associate him with the original Avengers, to be someone of so much great intrigue to me. Like Scott in the comics has some cool moments, but really like being a thief that kind of has the heart of gold is kind of like, I mean, it's interesting, and kudos to Paul Rudd because he does such a good job. But in the comics, Scott's character never really spoke to me in a big way. Ironically, in the comics, his daughter Cassie grows up to be a superhero in her own right, just like her father. And she, I think, is more interesting than her dad. But I digress. Yeah. Any other high points or?
Let's see. I don't know. Maybe I'm in a camp of my own, but I thought that the actual villain of the film, was actually done well in terms of like it wasn't. The villain wasn't really. The villain wasn't really all that much of a villain.
Yeah. More
so a person trapped in a set of circumstances that she had. Oh, screw it. That the person had little control over.
I see what you're saying.
And I think the villain blames Hank Pym, and that really it's kind of like the singular motivation behind the villain.
Right. No, I see what you're saying, and actually that brings me to where I would have gone next anyways, which is what we didn't like about the film, and that was what I didn't like about the film. Now, I will say this. Hannah John came in as Ghost in this film, or I think they call her Ava, her human name.
Yes, I think so, yeah.
Is an interesting choice, and I don't hate her in the role. I just kept feeling like this whole movie needed a bigger villain, like a real villain. And Sonny Birch, by the way, as kudos as I can to, I can't think of it, Walton Goggins, who's playing him in the movie. He felt so disposable, even though he was fun and interesting. And I was glad that he was in the movie, but on second thought, after I walked out of it, I was like, you could have cut this guy completely out of the movie and no one would have really even paid any attention to anything that was going on with him. Like, he was such a side character to this whole thing. And I was just like, yeah, all right, whatever. And then with her character, like what they do with it is interesting, and it ties in very nicely and all that. And I really appreciated that, but I just didn't feel like the stakes were high enough for a Marvel movie. And that's why I said in my Stardust review that I just thought like this was like an extended version of a Marvel one-shot.
Okay.
And it really just boils down to the stakes. Because to me, it doesn't have to be about an end of the world scenario. I just need to feel like the characters or someone is truly in danger. And there's a scene at the very tail end of the movie, which is like the real climax of it, where you think maybe in this 1-2 second moment that someone could end up losing their life. And it goes a certain way that I won't go into. But the fact that that was like the, that high tension moment of the entire film made it feel kind of subpar in comparison to the films that had come before. On that note, I will say I like that you have a more nuanced character with Ghost in this one, because she was a more relatable kind of individual that you could go, oh, you know what? I could kind of see where she's coming from in this. She's not like cackling maniacal, you know, kind of, you know, coming out of the shadows like, I have a dastardly plan and I'm going to ruin all your lives. She genuinely comes from a good place. So it's very interesting to see that play out. I just felt like the stakes weren't high enough, if that makes sense.
I mean, I guess it's not like the stakes weren't high. It's just much,
or the threat wasn't high enough.
Yeah, I mean, it was a much different goal for, you know, Ant-Man and the Wasp to accomplish.
Yeah,
you know, they're not trying to like fight off some, you know, like Yellow Jacket. They're not trying to fight him.
Right.
You know, they're in pursuit of someone.
Yeah.
And it kind of doesn't. I guess the whole, you know, fighting against you know, a more powerful foe.
Yeah.
Took a back seat because I think the more important aspect was finding that one individual person.
Right. Actually, what's interesting about that too, I was thinking, is that I didn't feel like anyone was going to really come to any harm in this film. Like, I didn't think anyone was going to get hurt, and that, I think that's the thing that kind of just stuck to me. Like everyone's having such a good time. It almost goes back to my feelings about Civil War, where, you know, I mentioned back then with Civil War, like the feeling of pinball characters, as I described it. There was less brutality in this than even that film. And I just felt like it was more of just like this fun comedic ride that just happened to have some superhero clashes along the way that had really no consequence whatsoever. It was about, you know, the development of characters and the search for someone, if that makes sense, I guess.
Yeah.
Which, again, complete departure from Infinity War. Does that make it a bad movie? No. But does that make it a movie that felt kind of disappointing, especially by comparison? Yeah, at least to me.
Okay.
Any other disappointments for you? Or actually, I didn't even get one from you yet.
Disappointments. I think the character of Foster.
Oh, Bill Foster?
Slightly doesn't make sense in terms of what he decides to do in the film towards the end. I can talk about it a little bit later on.
Yeah, I think you might need to refresh me, because I'm not like I had an issue with him, because I was like, oh, they're going to show him as Goliath, and I'm not going to say to what extent they show his character, but the way that they used him was different to me in a way that I wasn't expecting, and at one point I thought was refreshing, but I could have seen more from him, and that would have made me very happy, especially with a guy like Lawrence Fishburne. I felt like he was almost played, you know, in the background more or less throughout the rest of the movie.
Yeah, I think not so much like not necessarily seeing more of what he could have done. It's just more so the decisions he makes in the movie and why he does it.
Yeah, I could see that. Yeah. Also, in terms of villains and things like that, I was thinking again a little bit about Sonny Burch again, and like I know he's from the comics, and people have mentioned that to me before, because I was talking to people on through our Google account and emailing people back and forth about it. But like again, this movie in its own weird way kind of went in that 3-villain arc. Like I can argue to an extent that you have 3 antagonists throughout this film, but they're all very weak villains, except for maybe Ghost, who has more to offer than you'd expect. But I just feel like if they had centered on one person's perspective, or maybe even 2, that it could have enhanced that sort of villainous portrayal. And again, it's such a minute point in comparison to everything that's going on in the film, because it's a very fun and enjoyable ride. I thoroughly enjoyed it, but I can't deny that I had some hangups about it. And I'm just curious, at the end of it all, do you think that, you know, it's worth recommending to someone, or is this a Marvel film that could actually be, you know, wait for on Blu-ray DVD?
Personally, I saw it in IMAX 3D.
Oh, did you? Nice.
It was actually phenomenal, to be perfectly honest.
Huh. Okay. And it's actually, the funny thing about that is I was going to, if I wasn't already going down to San Diego Comic-Con and then LA the weekend after, I was actually going to try and take Amanda down to LA because they have this, I can't think of the name of the screen, but I think it's called like Screen X, and then they do 3 panels. So usually when you go into a movie theater, on the left and to the right, there's, the sound is coming out. You've got your sound projectors, whatever, your speakers. In this particular theater, it actually has the screen extended so much that it's on those walls. So it's 3 different panels of the same movie screen. And I thought, man, that would be cool to do. And they said that they were going to do it for Ant-Man and the Wasp. And I was just thinking, am I really going to drive from Salinas all the way down to LA just to see Ant-Man and the Wasp? If it had been Infinity War, I might have done it, but I couldn't bring myself to do it, and we saw it kind of standard def, and that it was fine. Which I think really, if we're getting to our overall thoughts, that's really where I put it. I think it's fine. It's a good movie that has some bridging aspects throughout the rest of the Marvel universe. I look at it as one big version of a Marvel one shot, and it's cool moments, cool de-aging and all that stuff, and cool little things, especially like, I should say this too. Now that I live in California and I've been to San Francisco now as much as I have, because we're going there like every other weekend, I could look at so many scenes in that movie and go like, oh my gosh, I just went down that street like last week. So that's kind of cool. But what is your overall take, non-spoilers?
It's a good movie. It's fun. If you're thinking about going to take, the kids and stuff, I think it's a perfectly awesome movie for them to see.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Okay, well, I think it's time to get into some spoiler talk here. So, what was the biggest reveal or revelation of this movie to you?
Oh, man. I think going into the movie, I was most excited to kind of see what they would do with the quantum realm. It had been kind of teased here and there. Never really, overtly kind of like, oh yeah, they're going to the quantum zone. And they said that, they kind of showed it, but we didn't know what was going to be in there. We didn't know like what was going to happen.
Right.
If any parts of the movie were going to be like mostly in the quantum realm, was it barely going to be used?
Yeah.
How they kind of tie how they tie Ghost, the kind of quote unquote villain of the movie, to the second quantum portal, and how that ties into Janet's character.
Yeah. I don't know. It was interesting to me because I thought the Janet thing would be the biggest reveal of it all, and it really wasn't much of anything. And I didn't want to say it's in non-spoilers, but that was kind of the biggest disappointment of the film. Is like, Janet to me was always this really cool, badass female character who, granted, much like Wonder Woman, had started off in the very early days as kind of like the secretary for the big group that she was affiliated with. But she grew into this strong and powerful character that was a big part of many storylines, including the one I wasn't going to mention in non-spoilers before, which is Hank Pym kind of going off the rails and, being a bit of a home record, so to speak. And that was one of those moments when I was reading the comics back when I was younger, and I was just thinking like, I felt very much like, what do I want to say, like feminist or whatever in that moment, where I was just like, yeah, you go girl, stand up for yourself. Like kind of that sort of thing. And okay. I've always really liked the character of the Wasp. So seeing her when they're starting to like gut open that missile, which, I don't remember the rest of that story from the first movie, but I remember them going on there and then her having to shrink down to get into the quantum realm and all that.
Yeah, they showed it briefly, but in this one they actually show her like crashing into all the like the circuits and stuff and kind of blowing up some of the stuff.
Yeah, and I like that they added the dialogue too.
They just showed her shrinking and going in between the metal.
Yeah, because there wasn't any dialogue, at least from what I recall there, at least from her. So that
it was silent, and then it was just music.
Yeah,
and it was Hank Pym narrating.
Exactly. Yeah, and that was something that was interesting to me, is get a little bit more of her perspective on it. And I think that this movie kind of suffers because it looks like it's going in a few different directions. One of the things that I would have loved is if they had actually made this more about the family dynamic. You didn't focus on trying to deal with Ghost. You didn't focus on trying to deal with Sonny Birch or any of that stuff. It was just about the search for Janet Van Dyne.
Well, I will argue that there is a huge emphasis on family in this movie.
It's true, and I agree, and I love when they have those come together moments. I'm
not even specifically talking about like the Pyms or anything.
Oh, okay,
I'm talking more like Lang's portion.
Oh yeah, no doubt. And actually, even the way that Ghost Ava talks about her father, who in the comics, I think this is retcon, but in the comics, I don't know if they explore her father, but the man that they say is her father is actually the character Egghead, who's one of Ant-Man's nemesis in the comics, and I think that's cool. But I feel like they could have chose someone better than Egghead. I don't know. I just kind of thought that there was so many different things that they were trying to focus on, where it could have just been the search for Janet Van Dyne. It had this very straightforward kind of point to it all. And what I was hoping for in my mind was that they were actually going to kind of make it a twist. Like they were going to go on the search, they were going to find her, and then it was going to turn out that she had been kind of warped and twisted. So the real Wasp, after all this time, was going to end up being her daughter. And even at the end of it all, the cool thing they could have done, and I'm not saying I'm totally right about this, but the cool thing that they could have done at the end of it was have her and Ant-Man work together to take down Janet and then like bring her back to reality. Like she had been in there for so long that it might have like warped and twisted her mind. That I think that would have been a cool way to play with it. But again, I'm not the one who writes these, so I'm just saying. But my biggest reveal out of the whole thing, if I'm being honest, was the fact that she came back with powers. Now, I don't remember that from the comics. Do you feel like that's going to get played on in the future, or is that just like a one-off?
I mean, nothing's ever really just kind of a one-off in the MCU.
Right.
Save for like maybe a couple of examples, like Yellow Jacket. But I think that they're really teasing, what the quantum realm can do.
Okay.
Because Janet said that like it wasn't like not so much that like the quantum realm did it to her. It was more so that she evolved.
Yeah. See,
so I wonder if they're going to either tie you could tie the Inhumans in there, throw them in the quantum realm. And, oh yeah, they come out in humans. Awesome.
I'm actually kind of with you on this. So I was talking with someone. Oh, go ahead.
X-Men.
Go ahead. Oh yeah, the X-Men.
No, good. No.
So I was talking with someone, a total stranger, who was in the theater after we got out, and I was thinking about this a little bit further. What is a possibility that after all of the, the finger snap and all that stuff, and she comes back and we see her in a future movie, what is the possibility she comes back and they call her an evolutionary? Yeah. So I was just saying, because like she spent all that time in there in the quantum realm, and then she describes it as sort of an evolution, quote unquote, instead of like being an adaptation. So, I mean, I don't think they'd call her a mutant for obvious reasons, like you were kind of saying, but I think that's a cool way to kind of give her something unique and say that she's special in this world, because now you have you have a Wasp, and she's already doing her thing. So, like making her this, semi-godlike character that has these abilities to heal and whatnot, it makes her kind of interesting.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Do you feel like, because I noticed this from the audience that we were with, and I'm not sure how you felt. Do you feel like her powers needed to be explained a little bit more? Because a lot of people seemed a bit confused as to why they were going in there to harness the power and then kind of
you talking about things at the end?
Yeah, where they're taking the quantum power. They have to get that.
Oh, okay. So, If you remember back when they were trying to get the component from what's his name?
From
Coggins,
which one?
or whatever his name is.
Oh, from Sonny Birch, yeah.
Yes. So when they were trying to get the part from that character, he said that he wanted in on the whole quantum realm thing.
Yeah.
It's this limitless source of energy that is going to sweep and change the world.
Yeah.
So at the very end, that's one of I'm assuming this is one of their little pieces of tech that can actually absorb it and can convert it into throwing it into like a reactor and completely eradicating gas or nuclear energy or something.
Right.
But they were specifically taking that energy so that Ghost could like stabilize herself for a long period of time.
Yeah, and like I don't know, I just felt like that was losing some people because I kept hearing people behind us like kind of like whispering to each other, like, "Wait, why are they going? why are they going back in there?" Like, yeah. So the quantum tunneling thing was, I felt like it was throwing some people off, but I was able to follow it enough. It made enough sense to me. I don't know. I felt like that commitment to that they should have tried to go a little bit further with it, but. Again, it's such a little thing to make a big deal out of that. I didn't have a problem with it per se. Let's go on to Easter eggs though. What was your favorite Easter egg of this film?
Favorite Easter egg?
Yeah.
I think the Hot Wheels case.
Oh yeah,
all the cars in there. I thought that was hilarious.
That was such a cool way to do it. And then especially when they give it to Michael Peña's character, is it Luis?
Yeah.
And then he gets that that purple car, and then they shrink it too, and then everyone in the theater busted up when he did that classic kind of like over the hill thing in San Francisco where the car goes flying, but he's the little Micro Machines car going over.
Oh yeah.
That was great. I love that.
I'm trying to think of any other ones I'm trying to think of.
Well, of course, Stan Lee was in there.
The obvious one with Goliath,
yeah.
With Lawrence Fishburne's character.
You want to talk about that for a second? Do you wish that he had been in there, like as Goliath?
So, I don't necessarily mind that he wasn't Goliath. I really would have wished there was like some sort of picture depicting him as Goliath, kind of like referencing it in The Office when he's talking to him.
Oh yeah, some like badass 70s kind of looking.
Yeah, kind of like a cool callback to like, hey, look how tall I was, 21 feet.
And then
kind of something like that. But
and they just made him like a agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. is what they said, right?
Well, he worked with Pym, and then later when S.H.I.E.L.D. kind of wanted Pym to work with him, and then S.H.I.E.L.D. wanted Pym and him to work with S.H.I.E.L.D., and then Pym's like, screw that, I'm out. And then Foster was kind of left to kind of pick apart what little reputation he had left.
Right. Well, because Elias Starr was part of that mix too. Elias Starr was the one that I was referring to before as Egghead. But yeah, that I do find that to be a little bit interesting that they had it more of like a former rivals, now the younger generation are dealing with the mistakes of the fathers kind of thing. I think that's kind of cool. That, again, bringing it back to the whole family part of it all.
Exactly. The one thing that kind of like I was a little like weirded out, and I may be seeing too much into this. I think Foster's character sort of took on a parental role to Ghost.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Yeah.
It kind of sounded weird because like he was trying to help her and stuff, and it almost felt like it almost looked like he felt guilty for her parents dying, like he had something to do with it.
I think it was more of just I'm sympathetic because this is what S.H.I.E.L.D. probably viewed as more of a lost cause kind of situation, or this experiment gone wrong, that it was being used terribly, and then he wanted to step in as the good guy and kind of mold and shape it in a positive way.
Okay.
And I'm with that. I get that, but it was weird sometimes how they were kind of portraying it, because they were basically saying like he's still the bad guy, so is she, and then you also have Goggins' character kind of mucking up the whole thing. I don't know. I just felt like there was three villains, and that bothered me a little bit. But
I mean, like Foster didn't necessarily feel like a villain,
right?
Personally,
and technically,
it's just,
yeah, even with Ava, you could say that she actually had good intentions. So kind of blurring that line. So yeah, it's a tricky thing, honestly, because I don't think it was bad. It was just, I don't know, maybe it was to a lesser extent how you felt about Star Wars, where it was just like it just subverted my expectations at almost every level. Aside from the fact that I knew they were going to go and get Janet Van Dyne, everything else was just like, oh, they went that route. Okay, that's weird. Okay, and I'm more than happy to admit when I don't see things coming, even if it doesn't fail or it fails to meet my expectations. I don't know. I just felt like if they had done something with Goliath and made him like the villain in the shadows, or if Janet had some ulterior motive after being warped and twisted in the quantum realm, there would have been some level of impact to it, like that you care about it. The problem is I don't think there was enough time invested into making Ava this character. You're like, oh, it's all connected and I care about her because she did this and that. She was just kind of like there. She's like, yeah, well, you guys are doing your thing, but I still got to take care of my thing. And occasionally we're going to cross paths. And that's why I didn't feel like nothing she really did had a lot of impact. But, you know, kudos to her at least having somewhat of relatability, which some of the other Marvel villains haven't been able to say that. So very interesting thing with her, I'd say. Any other Easter eggs or things that stood out in that sort of way to you?
Let's see.
Obviously, Stan Lee.
I loved, yes, obviously Stan Lee. What was the quote he had? Oh, they don't make them like they do. Oh, no, that's what I get for partying in the 60s or something like that.
I think that's what, something like that, yeah.
What was the other thing I was thinking of? I definitely appreciated the what is it? The rock star, or the drum set.
You like that? I got bothered by that.
That was hilarious.
I just thought that was such a kiddie kind of thing where it was like, oh, look, the ant's playing drums now too. I'm like I totally rolled my eyes. But I mean, the fact that they made it at the end of the film, or it was just like the outro of it all, or the end credits, I was like, all right, fine. But I kind of wanted to see something bigger at the end credits, you know? Although what we got mid credits, that was pretty sweet.
Mid credits made a lot of sense.
It pretty much made the entire movie, to me, worth paying to see it in the theater, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, I would say so.
Because if it didn't have that, okay, let me ask you this. If there wasn't that moment, do you think that the movie as it stands is still recommendable in a you should go and see this in theaters kind of way?
I guess for people that saw Infinity War and all the people that had the question of, you know, where was Ant-Man and the Wasp? Why weren't they helping out? Kind of thing. You know, they were dealing with this thing at like pretty much the precise same time that the Avengers and the Guardians of the Galaxy and Spider-Man were all dealing with Thanos and his Black Order and whatnot.
Yeah.
And it's not so much like I got it satisfying like, oh, that's what happened to Ant-Man. It's more of like, well, how the hell does he get back out now? Right.
All the questions that it brings up because, well, here's the thing, and we know this from behind the scenes, and we are in spoiler talk, so I'll bring it up. We know that Hope is going to show up in Avengers 4, so that brings up an interesting question of how does she come back? And two, how does Ant-Man get to join the team if he is stuck where he is? So, yeah, some very interesting questions come out of this, and I have no idea. Like, is he going to try and rupture the belt or whatever, like he did in the first movie, and just like shoot himself out of the quantum realm? Or
well, the thing is, I don't know if he can do that after using the quantum portal.
Oh, good point.
Because they used the miniature one in the back of the van.
Right.
And I'm not sure that he can just do that, because in the first movie he manually does it and then just switches the little little throwing star thingy, throws it into his belt. It reverses the whole effect. Versus here,
right,
he is literally being teleported to, the quantum realm. I'm not sure he can just do it manually like he did the first time.
Yeah, and I think they made a point in the movie too, something to the extent of like how he was using old tech and that's how he was able to access it versus the new suit, that like prototype one that Pym had made for him, which wasn't really there yet. So if he's using the new one, he might not have the accessibility to, pop in and out like he did before. So
yeah,
that's also a thing to consider. But there's greater minds than us at work on how he's going to get out of there. So we'll have to wait and see on that one. Some of the ones I wanted to bring up, the fact that we had Jimmy Woo in the film, who for ages had been a part of the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., not the terrible TV show, but the but the actual comic book Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. And I thought it was cool that we had him in there. He had some really funny moments. I can't think of the actor's name. Who he's the one from I can't think of the ABC show, but he's done a lot of great work, and I just thought he was really funny in the whole movie, especially after they kept playing that whole tag game where they were trying to like catch him in the act where like he was supposed to be on house arrest, and they kept going, and every time he was there he was like either playing drums
you're talking about Randall Park.
Randall Park, yeah, exactly. Thank you. Yeah, I love Randall Park stuff. Even like going into the more, I guess, controversial territory when they did the movie The Interview, and he was playing.
God, that's a hilarious movie.
I really do. I really do love that movie. It is funny. But he's done some great work, and I was glad to see him play Jimmy Woo because I wasn't sure who he was going to end up playing in this. I just knew that he was on the billing, and he had some really great moments, and I really loved having him in there. The only other Easter egg of sorts that I can recall, aside from me, what I mentioned earlier, having Cassie become like her father and also becoming a hero, I would say, I don't know, maybe the fact that they had the ex-con security, which in the comics is actually Ant-Man Security Solutions, which, yeah. So, I mean, there is that sort of thing, and I thought that was kind of cool. Or the fact that they had, I don't know if it's really an Easter egg, but as they're going into the quantum realm, what are they called? Amanda and I were just watching South Park. They're called water bears.
Troglodytes.
No, water bears, I think is what they're called.
Scientific name is troglodyte.
No, it's like tardigrades, right?
Tardigrades, yes.
Yeah.
No, you're right.
Troglodytes, right. I think means like slow or something like that, or like a I don't know.
Oh, that's a person who lived in a cave.
Yeah. I was gonna say like a Neanderthal kind of thing. Okay, yeah, close enough though, right? No, but yeah, like the water bears. I was like, that's a very interesting and oddly specific thing for them to kind of focus on in that moment. But Amanda and I were just watching this episode of South Park where there's a whole thing about being obsessed with the NFL and water bears, and it's a really weird episode. But Amanda and I just both looked at each other in the middle of the movie like, water bears, and I don't know, it's just one of those weird moments that couples have. But I just thought that was kind of an interesting thing to bring up. We were talking about it for a second there, but I want to, before we get out of the Easter egg stuff, let's talk about the snap. How do you feel about the snap and its impact throughout the rest of the Marvel universe at this point?
Okay, so honestly, like I don't really feel any different about it.
You're not like worried how things are going to play out now, or?
Not really at this stage. I mean, it's.
You were just saying how you had all these questions about how they're going to get out and whatnot.
Well, I'm talking about how Ant-Man gets out of the quantum realm.
Yeah. I think that's worth asking some questions about, I'd say.
I mean, it's worth asking. I'm not sure if, I'm trying to think this out here. Maybe the Avengers just kind of like come upon them, and then they're like, what if we hit this button and it zaps out Ant-Man, and he's like, what? Oh. Okay, so if How long is it before? So what's the time period between Infinity War and Avengers 4?
I believe, if I'm not mistaken, wait, from when to when? From 3 to 4?
Yes.
I've heard 2 years. I could be wrong on that.
2 years? Okay. He's in the quantum realm for that long, exposed to it. Mm-hmm. Not as long as Janet, but maybe he develops something, maybe kind of like a small grade power out of the quantum realm.
Oh, I like that idea, but then that would ruin Janet, because Janet could come out. Maybe it's not even the fact that he comes out with some cool power. It's that he has a better understanding of quantum physics or something. Maybe it makes him a little bit more useful rather than just getting talked down to like some cat burglar like he usually does. You're right. Yeah. I don't know. See, I just think he's going to pop out. I think he's going to, because Marvel does a lot of fan service, and I'm not saying that as a slap in the face or nothing, but I think they're going to have him freak out for a little bit, and then they're going to show him tinkering with his belt forever, to the point where it's completely scattered and parts are everywhere. And then he's going to, after, maybe 2 years, quote unquote, time, when we pick up with the next Avengers film, he's going to snap it back together and be like, hope this works. And then boom, he pops out, and then he looks out at the world around him. And from there, that's kind of our jumping off point where we just go, okay, here's the world we're in. And now he's kind of discovering what's happened just like the rest of us. My only concern, though, is, does the world really understand what's going on? Or is this more like everyone's slowly getting erased from everyone's memory, and after a while they can't even remember that this has even happened? Like the fact that Groot is gone, for example, people can't remember that Groot even existed.
Oh, do they actually fade out of memory?
See, that's what I'm wondering, because I don't think it's been discussed yet, but I'm guessing it's probably not, because why would they be going to fix things if they didn't know that there was something that needed fixing, if you catch my drift?
Exactly.
The only way I could see that working is if that's the case and everyone's forgotten except for Scott, who's outside of the time bubble or loop or whatever, because he's in the quantum realm. He pops back in and goes, what the hell just happened? Why is it no one here? I'm the only one who seems to remember all of this stuff because I'm outside of that sphere.
Sure.
And maybe I'm getting really scientifically and nerdy about this, but if that plays out that way, I'll just kind of have my chest puffed out for 2 seconds, because I don't think anyone said that yet, but I feel like that's a thing that could happen. And if it does, cool. How do you see it playing out? You don't have to be right. Just what your thought is. You know?
I think maybe he finds out that his daughter's gone.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And then,
that would be sad. Did they acknowledge that she's gone too?
I don't know. They don't show it.
Okay. Because that was some side thing where they didn't even talk about and also his daughter's gone too. I would have got so choked up. That would have got me more than seeing Hank or Janet go. Because again, their connection is so good in that movie.
I don't know.
Yeah.
A lot of questions to be asked, so to speak. But,
absolutely. But yeah, you think that everyone's going to kind of remember everybody, and it's just more of the quest to go and see them?
I don't think there's going to be any sort of retrograde amnesia or anything like that. It's just going to be, they come out, or Lane comes out and he's just what in the hell happened?
Yeah. I like you with your fancy words there, your retrograde amnesia. That's pretty good. But yeah, it could very well be that, and I'm curious to see how that plays out. Let's go into character discussions. What character really stood out to you in this film?
What character stood out to me?
Good or bad, in some unique way. What one stole the show for you?
I would slightly lean towards I honestly got to say Wasp, Hope Van Dyne. I think seeing her as like the new Wasp and just seeing all like the crazy stuff that she does was pretty fun to watch. Although I'm gonna say Scott Lang getting his new ant suit and having it malfunction all the time was comical.
I was gonna say that was definitely the star of the show, and it didn't even need him in it. It was just the fact that the suit was its own character, kind of like how Doctor Strange was. Is like once he gets the cape has its own little things that just make it stand out, rather than the Scott part of it all. I'm with you on that. Do you wish that they had done more of that, or was that just tonally just what it needed to be?
No, I think it was perfect for the character. And I guess maybe too much of it would have just been, too much.
Fair enough. Okay.
There is a line between, too much comedy, so to speak.
Yeah, I'm with you on that, and that's where I kind of come in. Where I've said this before. I think that the comedy was a little bit extra. But I didn't hate it because I think, especially when you have the Michael Pena moments or you have the Scott Lang, Paul Rudd moments, whatever, those are the ones that just really hit. No matter how, seemingly over the top that the direction is from Peyton Reed on this movie, it just seems like those guys understand comic timing well enough that they can turn this little nugget into some sort of gold. And I just could not stop enjoying the comical parts. So that's that. And then the family moments that I mentioned before are stuff that really stood out to me. I think the one character that really stood out to me in a very interesting way, was Hank himself, because I felt like there was more of an exploration into, the way his mind works on all of this stuff and like the trials and tribulations that he's had to go through. And the way that he feels about Janet and their relationship being explored more, it makes him so much more interesting of a character rather than the way I felt he was in the first movie. In the first movie, I felt like he was more like crotchety man who didn't want to have anything to do with the world. And, now this young upstart is going to kind of take over my mantle because you're old and you're set in your ways, man. And I'm going to show you I can do it differently. Like it was that sort of movie. And in this one, I actually kind of enjoyed it because it was like, he seemed like he had a purpose and he didn't seem like he was just sitting behind the chair navigating what to do. He wanted to go and seek out his own particular adventure, and that was to save the love of his life. And it actually made him less crotchety of a character too, which I loved, because I as much as I like Wall Street version of oh shoot, I can't think of his name now. I want to say Michael
Douglas.
I was going to say Michael Sheen, but I was confusing him with Martin Sheen. But anyways, with Michael Douglas though, I love the fact that, it just seemed like he had a little bit more of a rounded out character. He was still kind of old and crotchety and like, Scott, you shouldn't do this, and Scott, you shouldn't do that. But like at the same time, like he was still smiling. He had good moments with his daughter. You could see his eyes light up anytime that he talked about Janet. And then when he finally sees her, he's a completely different person. Like finally, like someone unlocked the key to his heart and it just kind of opened up in that moment. I just love that. And it was really good to see. And I really enjoyed what they did with Michael in this movie, especially that, like I said before, the fact that we get to have more of those flashbacks to his earlier days. I do want to bring that up too. Do you feel like, and maybe this is just me, it would have been cool to have like a whole movie set in the past with younger Hank Pym? Or would that be too much?
Kind of.
Okay.
And it's not like, and I say this with the greatest respect, it's not like a movie I'm clamoring to see.
Fair enough. Okay.
Se.
I'm with you.
It would be cool, nonetheless, but again, like, is there that much or enough interest in that kind of story?
I would say that there is, just because of everything that they alluded to here. Just because they talk about Bill becoming Goliath at one point, and the fact that there was this kind of clashing within S.H.I.E.L.D. where the three fathers had been at that one point. Well, I don't know if Bill's a foster in this movie, but you see my point though. Like Bill and Hank, and then Ava's father. Like the fact that they all clashed at S.H.I.E.L.D. and then we could have got more of S.H.I.E.L.D. I don't know. I think some of that's interesting. It doesn't have to be explored by any means, but
yeah,
I would have paid for that movie. Especially a little bit more of a younger version of Janet would have been very interesting to see as well. But
that's true.
Yeah. I mean, it just depends on what they're willing to tell. And in this case, it was a continuation of what we had already had. So I'm more than happy that we got it. Any other details of the film that really stuck out to you that you felt like needed to be explored here?
I mean, there was the one minor detail of, did we already kind of hit that? Who Coggins works for? Whatever his name is. I can't remember his name.
Who he works for?
Yeah.
Did they say that? I might have missed that point.
Or who the buyer was, who was trying to get all the tech?
I think I might have missed that point. Go on.
Okay, so same dude that was selling the component, he had a buyer that wanted all of Hank Pym's technology, and he was offering $1 billion for it. Now, who is the person that was offering $1 billion for all of his tech?
I'm going to give you a shot out of Iron Man 2 and say Justin Hammer. No? I guess Hammer is a little bit more offensively driven with guns and whatnot, but
yeah,
that's who I was thinking of. Either that or maybe like the Roxxon Corporation.
Maybe.
Yeah. I mean, hard to say. If they don't really like exclusively lean into that and like allude to who that buyer is with like a symbol or some sort of, flash of like what it might be.
We didn't get any sort of clue as to who it might be.
And that's kind of where my problem is with Goggins playing Sonny Birch. It's not that he did a bad job with it. He did a perfectly fine job. But the problem is that there's not an exploration as to why his character matters to the greater, development of this movie. Like as the movie progresses, I'm like, oh, they're going to reveal that he's affiliated with someone big or something important in the MCU. And nothing. It's just he's kind of chasing after the thing that they're chasing after. And it's... Like, I would rather just cut him out. And again, I've said this about some other Marvel films in the past. I can't remember. I think maybe when we were talking about Deadpool 2 or something. But I just felt like they keep having these excuses to pepper in these characters who are going after the same thing. But the question is why? There's not enough exploration or enough time to explore that character in a way that is, at least from my perspective, satisfying enough. When you could just dedicate that extra time to, hey, Ava is a villain and here's why she stands out more as a villain than, oh, she's got mildly selfish reasonings behind what she's doing,
Yeah.
It makes her more of a, again, nuanced character where she's kind of like in that middle where she's kind of like good, but she's kind of bad. She's got her good reasons, but I don't know. I felt like if they had given more time to her character, she could have been just as engaging as someone like Michael B. Jordan was earlier this year with Black Panther. But they didn't really give her that. They just kind of was like, well, I had it bad, so now I just want to fix myself, and that's it. And I don't know. I felt like something more could have been done there, or maybe a different villain could have made that sort of thing more interesting. I don't know. Hard to say, but I just wanted more at the end of the day. And I'm not saying that I was disappointed with what we got. I felt like for everything that Marvel's done up until this point, this felt again just like a weaker entry in terms of like the superheroism aspect of it all. In terms of being, if you were to categorize this as any other movie, if you were to say like, oh, I want to go and see that fun family kind of comedy with a little bit of action thrown in, and it was like removed from the Marvel aspect of it all, I would have been like, yeah, this is a fantastic movie. I probably would have bumped it up a good 2 more notches. I put this, if we're getting into kind of our rankings now, I would say this is probably about a 6.97 for me. I could easily have bumped it up to like an 8 or 9 if this wasn't a Marvel movie. How do you feel?
I'd say it's stronger than Ant-Man 2.
It is Ant-Man 2.
Yeah, but even
you just wait. Hold on. You just said it's stronger than Ant-Man 2. What do you mean it's stronger than Ant-Man 2?
Oh, I meant sorry. It's stronger than the first Ant-Man.
Okay, just making sure.
Getting a little tired here.
No, that's all right.
I don't think it had quite the kick that say Guardians of the Galaxy did, or Winter Soldier did, or even Iron Man 2. You could kind of make a debate for that, but
yeah,
it seems as the second entry.
Okay.
It's still fun.
Yeah,
but
totally.
It doesn't leave that kind of impact that Winter Soldier did, Guardians of the Galaxy 2 did,
right?
Even Iron Man 2 to a certain extent.
Yeah, aside from maybe that the snap at that sort of scene at the very end credit or in the mid credits,
we sort of already expected that was going to happen.
Right. Now, what was going to come of that? We didn't necessarily guess the pieces that fell the way that they did, but still we knew that they had to show something to that effect. If they didn't, that would be a disappointment. Yeah, so I'm with you on that. I don't know what I would have done necessarily to make it better unless I was, maybe up the ante of one of the villainous type characters that are in this film. Other than that, I think that it's a good movie, but I'm not recommending people go. I'm honest to God saying this, and I think I might have even said this in one of my Stardust reactions. I think that if given the choice, especially after seeing it now, I would recommend the new Jurassic World movie over Ant-Man. I know some people are probably going to very much disagree with that. Although I'm going to say the box office doesn't lie, because it's destroying at the box office right now.
It's dinosaurs, of course it will.
That's true. That's a good point. Yeah, I mean, especially foreign box office seems to love their dinosaurs too, because I found this out the other day that it's more about what American movies have going on in them rather than what they're saying, because they don't have to follow the story as much. So
okay,
I can agree with that to a point. I thought that there was more going on. The stakes were higher. The interest for me, even though I'm not the biggest Jurassic Park or World fan, I'd say that's the one that I would recommend people go and see between the two of these. But by no means am I saying that Ant-Man and the Wasp is not good, because it has a lot of fun moments that I want to see more of in a future film. Actually, my last question, where do you want to see the next Ant-Man film go? Or do you want to see another Ant-Man film?
The next Ant-Man film. Oh man, that's kind of that's
do you want to see it or no?
I do.
Okay.
It's more so, what else can you show about the Ant-Man world that A, hasn't been told, and B, hasn't been sort of recycled and used in other MCU properties?
I'd say two things. One, I would say the exploration as to what Janet can do, for one, and two,
that's if she comes back.
Well, yeah, well, good point. Yeah, that would be an interesting way to write off someone after one movie. But that and the growth of Cassie into a hero herself, where it's kind of like a father teaching his daughter how to be a hero. Because I think, she's not, at high school level yet, but by the time they get through, Ant-Man, or I'm sorry, after they get past Avengers 4, they do another Spider-Man movie, Captain Marvel, you could see her grow up into like a freshman year of high school kind of character, and she could be going on a Spider-Man Homecoming level kind of adventure in San Francisco, which I think would be kind of fun.
You got a point there.
Because she comes on pretty early as a hero, so just an additional thought there, if you will. But yeah, ultimately though, you would recommend this to people?
Yeah, I still think I would recommend this for people to see.
And I would too. If anyone was to ask, I'd be like, yeah, it's another great Marvel movie that isn't Thor: The Dark World or isn't Incredible Hulk, I would totally.
God,
yeah. I still say I think I like Thor: The Dark World better than Incredible Hulk. I just cannot recommend that movie to anyone. But I still think that this is a movie that I would absolutely recommend to anyone, especially if they want to keep, going along with the storyline of what's going on in the Marvel Universe. So, gets my thumbs up here too. So, I think that's going to do it for this episode and this week. We will have also a Nerd Rage Weekly episode coming up next. Keep an eye out for that. We will probably have this and our return of 30 Minutes of Life coming out back to back on the same day. So please, if you guys can, we mentioned it on the 30 Minutes of Life episode. Go to our iTunes. If you guys want to support us there and just give us a little bit of a positive review, that always looks good for us. We will be giving out free Funko Pops to any of our fans who do write a positive review up until the first 15. So we have a bunch to give away. They're exclusives from Toys R Us, which unfortunately now is defunct. But we do have a whole bunch of these that were given to us. It was a very nice offer that the local Toys R Us gave to us as a way to say thank you for their business, or for our business over the years. If you guys could go to Facebook, Twitter, and support us over there. If you guys want to click at the top of each of our links at Twitter and Facebook, you can go and support us through Amazon. Make any purchase after you click on that, and it will go and support the show. And then we also have TeePublic. Go and support us on there. Buy any of our merchandise. You can get stickers, buttons. You can get shirts. You can get hoodies. The whole 9 yards. And if we haven't got it already, we'll make a custom design for you guys too if you're ever looking for it. Trying to think of what else, Brad. Is there any other thing? Oh, and if you guys want to be on the show for a future episode, or if you just want to talk to us in private, kind of on the sides like many of you guys do, including our more business-related contacts, which maybe I shouldn't say right here, but I'll leave it at that, have been talking to us, and we have some news to report on Nerd Rage Weekly about that. You can reach us at nerdragepod@gmail.com and talk to us there about anything you want to talk about, whether it's Comic-Cons and things we're doing, or anything if you want to be on the show. I think that's going to do it. Thank you guys for listening to this Reacts for Ant-Man and the Wasp, and we will see you guys another time.